I've never been the kind of man who believed in love. Hell, I've seen enough of it fall apart to know better. My ma left when I was 6, left my old man shattered and mean. I remember the way he used to sit on that broken-down porch every night, bottle in hand, cussing her name into the dark, like it'd bring her back. It didn't. Nothing ever does. So I decided early on that love was just a fancy word folks used before everything went sideways. I spent most of my life chasing the next rodeo, the next win, the next ride that made me feel like I was still alive. There's something about being on the back of a bull that forces everything else out of your mind. No heartbreak, no regret, no damned memories. Just you and the beast fighting for control. And for a while that was enough. People in these parts know me as Cole. Cole Barrett, the one who never settled. I got a reputation, sure. Not for being cruel, just distant. I'd been with women, sure, but none ever stayed longer than a weekend, maybe a week if things were hot. I didn't do promises. I didn't do forever. So when I got a call from old man Rawlins, I almost didn't pick up. His voice was grave, urgent, and laced with something I couldn't place. Regret, maybe. Desperation, definitely. He said he needed to talk, said it was important, and that it involved his daughter. Now, I ain't ever been close with Rawlins, but he was respected. Owned half the land west of our town. Always walked like he had the weight of 100 years on his shoulders. I figured I'd hear him out, if nothing else. I drove out to his ranch that same evening, dust trailing my truck like smoke from a slow-burning fire. The sky was bruised purple, sun melting into the hills. I hadn't been there in years, not since he hosted that harvest auction where I won my first belt buckle. When I pulled in, he was already waiting, standing out front with a stiff glass of bourbon and eyes that looked older than the last time I saw them. We didn't exchange pleasantries. Rawlins wasn't the type. He just gestured for me to sit on the porch beside him, like we were already in the middle of something sacred and sorrowful. "She's gone," he said. I thought he meant his wife, but then he added, "The groom. He ran off this morning." That's when it hit me. He was talking about June, his daughter. I remembered her barely. She was younger than me by a handful of years, always wore her hair in braids, and had that fire in her eyes even as a kid. Pretty girl, but I hadn't seen her since she left for college. Rumor had it she came back recently, with a ring on her finger and a wedding date set. Guess that plan went belly up. "What's that got to do with me?" I asked, already bracing for some nonsense favor. Rawlins didn't blink. "I need you to take her place." I laughed, couldn't help it, thought maybe he'd lost his damn mind, but he just stared at me, waiting for the joke to settle and the silence to sober me. "Her place," I echoed. "What the hell does that mean?" He looked me dead in the eyes then. "There's a rodeo tomorrow, big one, state championship. Her fiancé was supposed to ride, now he won't. But if someone wins it, it changes everything. For the ranch, for the name, for her." I didn't see where this was going until he said it, until he laid out the deal like a man tossing cards on a table in a dusty saloon. "If you win that final round," he said, voice cracking for the first time, "you marry her." That was the agreement I made with her fiancé. Keep her protected, keep the ranch from falling into the hands of her mother's family. She doesn't know yet, but it's the only way. I should have said no, should have walked off that porch and never looked back. But something in his face, maybe the grief, maybe the guilt, made me stay. I ain't ever believed in love, but I've always believed in honor. I looked out at the horizon, at the stars blinking awake over the fields. Maybe this was just another ride, another beast to wrestle, another storm to outlast. But deep down, even then, something stirred, something I wasn't ready to name. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? After what Rawlins told me, my head was spinning with questions I couldn't shut off. What kind of father makes that kind of deal? And what kind of man agrees to it? But maybe the better question was, why hadn't I just walked away? The thing is, I'm not the type to back down from a challenge. Never have been. I've broken bones and cracked ribs chasing wins that didn't mean half as much as this one seemed to. But this wasn't about money or pride or a silver belt buckle. This was about a woman I hadn't seen in years and a future I never planned for. I sat on my porch until the sky turned that pale gray just before dawn, coffee gone cold in my hand, my boots up on the railing, trying to convince myself that I didn't care, that I was just doing Rawlins a favor, that I could walk into that arena, ride like hell, win it, and deal with the rest later. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not how she looked now, but how I remembered her. June Rawlins, 10 years old and chasing after her dog in a sundress 2 sizes too big. Always fearless, always burning too bright for this dusty old town. I wondered if any of that fire had survived the years, or if life had worn it down like sandpaper. When I pulled up to Rawlins' place the next morning, everything was quiet. The wedding was supposed to happen that day, but the guests had been turned away. The decorations were still up, flapping in the breeze like ghosts of a celebration that never happened. I felt out of place, like I'd walked onto a stage mid-performance, with no script and no idea what part I was supposed to play. Rawlins met me by the barn. He was already dressed in his Sunday best, boots polished, tie crooked, face set like stone. He looked like a man ready to bury something. Maybe his pride, maybe his daughter's dreams. "She doesn't know you're the one riding," he said, handing me a clipboard. "I told her someone stepped in last minute." "And the wedding?" I asked, still half hoping he'd changed his mind. He didn't answer right away, just looked off into the distance, where the hills rolled out like waves frozen in time. "She thinks she's free now," he finally said. "Thinks the worst is over. But if we don't follow through on this agreement, the land goes to her uncle. It was in the prenup. If there's no wedding, we lose everything." I didn't know what to say. I'm not a man used to playing hero, and this didn't feel noble. It felt dirty, like we were using her, lying to her. But Rawlins wasn't pleading. He wasn't the type. This wasn't a man begging. It was a man drowning, holding out a rope and daring me not to grab it. I nodded once. That was all he needed. I spent the next few hours prepping my gear, checking my saddle, brushing down my horse, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind off what was coming. The arena was already buzzing when I arrived. Crowds in the stands, dust rising with every stomp of hoof and boot, the announcer's voice echoing through the speakers like thunder. I was the last ride of the day, the final round, the one that would decide the winner, and apparently my fate. As I sat on that horse in the chute, reins tight in my fists, all I could think about was her, not the crowd, not the money, not even the pain waiting for me if I messed up. Just her, June, somewhere in the stands, unaware that the man about to ride was the one she'd be forced to call husband. The gate flew open and the world narrowed. 8 seconds, that's all I had to make it count. Every muscle in my body moved on instinct, every motion timed to the violent rhythm of the bull beneath me. I held on like my life depended on it, because maybe it did. When the buzzer sounded, I dismounted clean, hit the dirt hard, and rolled to my feet. The crowd roared. I didn't hear it. I didn't feel the pain in my shoulder. All I felt was the weight of what I'd just done, and what came next. Rawlins was waiting for me at the gate, holding something small in his hand. A ring. "She won't understand at first," he said, "but you'll take care of her. I know you will." And in that moment I realized something. This wasn't just his desperate bargain. It was mine now too. When people talk about life-changing moments, they usually mean something grand: winning the lottery, surviving a car crash, watching your child be born. But for me, it was a bet. Just a damn bet. 1 round, 8 seconds, and the woman I'd be tied to for the rest of my life. I'd been in hundreds of rodeos before. I'd ridden bulls that would make a grown man weep. I'd walked away from near death more times than I can count. But nothing had ever felt like this. Not because it was harder, because it mattered. And that, for me, was new territory. They called my name, Cole Barrett, last rider of the night. The crowd erupted, but I barely heard it. All I could focus on was the weight of the moment. The raw, surreal knowledge that this ride wasn't just about the prize. It was about ownership, duty, maybe even salvation. A girl's future was somehow wrapped around my success or failure. The bull was a mean one, a legend called Blackjaw. No rider had stayed on him more than 6 seconds that season. He was pure muscle, eyes wild, tail snapping like a whip. Perfect. If I was gonna win a woman, I figured I might as well earn her. I remember stepping into the chute, my gloves tight, heart pounding. I looked down at the beast below me and whispered the same thing I always did before a ride. Let's make it count. Only this time, it wasn't for me. When the gate blew open, everything exploded. Blackjaw bucked like hell, twisting and turning with fury. My body jerked in rhythm, my mind gone silent. No thoughts, just muscle memory and grit. My grip screamed, my spine burned, but I stayed on. I stayed on until that buzzer rang out like a church bell at a funeral. I hit the ground hard, but rolled back up, gasping for breath, chest heaving. I'd done it. 8 seconds. The crowd surged. Flags waved, cameras flashed, announcers shouted my name, but all I could think about was her, June. She stood at the edge of the arena with her father, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted. She didn't know what had just happened. Not really. To her, it was a dramatic save at a rodeo. She had no idea it was the end of her freedom, or maybe the beginning of something else entirely. Rawlins approached first, pride in his eyes and a kind of reluctant relief in his shoulders. He clapped me on the back like a general thanking a soldier after a battle. "You did good, son," he said, "real good." And then he handed me the envelope. It was thick, legal documents inside, already signed, already stamped. The agreement. If I signed that final page, it was done. Marriage by agreement. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't clean, but it was binding. I asked one question before I touched the pen. "Does she know?" Rawlins hesitated. "She will." I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea of springing something like this on her, like she was a reward for a job well done. She wasn't a prize. She was a person, one who had just had her life flipped upside down. Again, I looked over at her. She was talking to one of the event organizers now, her brow furrowed. She had that look, the one I remembered from when we were kids, like she was about to punch someone or walk away forever. That look scared me more than the bull did. But still, I signed. And that was the moment everything shifted. The crowd started to thin. Music blared from the loudspeakers. Fireworks lit up the night sky. I should have felt like a champion. I didn't. I felt like a man walking into a storm. June found me as I was putting away my gear. She looked beautiful, dusty from the arena, hair pulled back in a messy braid, dress wrinkled and boots scuffed. But her eyes were fire. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded. I opened my mouth to explain, but nothing came out at first. How do you tell someone they were just handed off like a business deal? "Your father made a deal," I finally said, "with your ex-fiancé before he left. He promised the ranch would stay in the family if you married whoever won today's final ride." Her face went pale. "And that's you?" I nodded. "Yeah." She stepped back like I'd slapped her. "You agreed to this?" I wanted to lie, wanted to tell her it wasn't what it seemed, but I couldn't. I didn't plan to, but I did. I rode for you, for the ranch, for everything your father said was at stake. She looked at me for a long time. That silence. It was louder than any applause I'd heard that day. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I'm not something you win, Cole." And with that, she turned and walked away. I've been thrown from bulls, kicked in the ribs by wild mustangs, and dragged through mud by horses twice my weight. But nothing, and I mean nothing, knocked the wind out of me like the look in June Rawlins' eyes when she said, "I'm not something you win, Cole." I stood there like a fool, still holding my gear, dirt in my mouth and sweat clinging to my shirt, while she walked away without a single glance back. I'd seen that fire in her when we were younger, but back then it was playful, like a spark that lit up a room. Now, it was something else, a wildfire, angry, untamable, and aimed straight at me. Part of me wanted to chase after her, explain that I hadn't planned this, that I didn't even know her ex-fiancé had run off until the day before, that I was only trying to help. But another part of me knew damn well that would sound like exactly what it was, an excuse. So, I let her walk. I didn't see her for 2 days after that. Rawlins said she went to stay with her cousin across town to clear her head. Truth was, she probably just needed to get away from me, and I didn't blame her. In the meantime, the legal process moved fast. Rawlins was a man who didn't waste time, especially not when it came to protecting his land and his name. The marriage certificate was filed, the courthouse date was set, and there I was, a groom without a bride, wondering how the hell I got myself into a situation that felt more like a prison sentence than a partnership. Then, on the 3rd day, she came back. I was in the barn feeding the horses when I heard the gravel crunch under truck tires. I stepped outside and saw her climbing down from the cab, jeans tucked into her boots, hair tied back like she meant business. No makeup, no frills, just pure, unfiltered June. She looked like she belonged on a battlefield, not a front porch. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded, suddenly feeling like a kid caught skipping school. We sat on the porch steps, a few feet apart, neither of us speaking for a long while. She was the one who finally broke the silence. "I read the papers," she said, her voice low but steady. "I know what the agreement says. I know what my father did, and I know you didn't force anything. But Cole, you went along with it." "I know," I said quietly. "I didn't plan to. But your dad was desperate, and I thought I could help." She looked at me then, and it wasn't anger in her eyes anymore. It was something worse, disappointment. "I don't need saving," she said. "I needed a choice." I nodded. I wanted to argue, to tell her that it wasn't just about her, that the ranch was on the line, that her father was drowning and I was just the nearest hand he could grab. But she was right. I'd taken the choice away from her, and for a woman like June, that was unforgivable. Still, she didn't leave. She stayed on that porch with me as the sun set behind the hills, and after a while, she spoke again, softer this time. "My mother was married off the same way," she said, "to a man she barely knew. She spent 20 years pretending that was normal, and then she walked away, leaving me and my father behind. I swore I'd never end up like her. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there, listening, letting the silence settle between us like dust in the golden light. "I'm not saying I'll go through with this," she said eventually, "but I'm not running either. Not yet." That was the closest thing to hope I'd heard in days. Over the next week, we circled each other like two wild animals, unsure whether to fight or run. She stayed on the ranch, helping with chores, keeping to herself, and avoiding me as much as possible. But every now and then, I'd catch her watching me, when I was brushing down the horses, fixing the fence, or bringing in firewood. And once, just once, she laughed at something I said. It was small, barely a sound, but it meant everything. She was still angry, still raw and wounded, but she was here, and that meant something. I didn't know if we'd ever be what her father wanted us to be. Hell, I didn't even know if we'd make it to the courthouse. But I knew one thing for sure. She wasn't a prize. She wasn't a trophy. She was a woman with fire in her eyes and pride in her spine. And if there was even a chance she'd let me earn her respect, I was going to try like hell to be worthy of it. The courthouse smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. That's what I remember most. Not the vows, not the judge's voice, not even the way June looked standing next to me in her simple blue dress. Hair pinned up, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. No, what stuck with me was that damn smell. Like someone had tried to scrub away 100 years of messy human stories, and failed. Neither of us smiled. We didn't exchange rings. There was no kiss, just a signature. Hers, then mine. That's what made it real. It wasn't love, it wasn't even close, but it was done. We drove back to the ranch in silence, the tension between us thick enough to choke on. She stared out the window the whole way, arms folded, face hard. I didn't try to talk. What the hell was I supposed to say? Thanks for marrying me against your will? Sorry your father bargained away your future like a prize goat at auction? Nothing felt right, so I kept my mouth shut. When we pulled into the driveway, she didn't wait for me. She slammed the truck door and walked straight into the house. I followed a few minutes later, slower, dragging my boots across the porch like they weighed 100 pounds. Inside, she was already unpacking, methodical, quiet, deliberate. "Which room's yours?" she asked, not looking up. I blinked. Down the hall to the right." "Good, I'll take the one on the left." And just like that, we were roommates. Strangers bound by paper and circumstance, sharing a house but not a life. She kept her distance, and I respected it. Didn't try to touch her. Didn't even sit next to her unless I had to. I figured the least I could do was give her space. We split the chores. Unspoken, automatic. She cooked most nights. I did the heavy lifting. She took care of the garden. I fixed fences and mended broken things. We worked side by side, sometimes without exchanging more than a dozen words, and yet the silence between us started to change. It stopped feeling cold. It started feeling familiar. One night, I came in late from fixing the water pump out by the east field. I was covered in grease and dust, dead tired and starving. I expected to find an empty kitchen. Instead, I found her there, barefoot, sipping tea and a plate of food left out for me, still warm. She didn't say anything, just nodded toward the plate. I sat down, muttered a quiet thanks, and started eating. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Another night, we both reached for the same book in the living room, some worn-out paperback of cowboy poetry that belonged to her mother. Our hands touched, just for a second, but her fingers didn't pull away immediately, and neither did mine. That was the beginning of something new, small moments, fleeting but real. I learned she liked thunderstorms, said the noise helped her sleep. She learned I hated them, said the silence they left behind reminded me too much of my mother's absence. She didn't try to fix it, just started leaving a lantern lit outside my door on stormy nights. No words, just light. One morning, I caught her laughing with one of the ranch hands. A real laugh, head tilted back, eyes bright. I stood there, watching from the barn, realizing I hadn't seen her laugh like that since we were kids. It made something stir in my chest, something soft and dangerous. I didn't love her, not yet, but I could see how a man might. Then one night, everything shifted. We were sitting on the porch, drinking coffee, watching the stars. It was quiet except for the crickets and the creak of the rocking chairs. "You ever think about running?" she asked suddenly. I nodded. "More times than I can count." "What stopped you?" I thought about it. Maybe I didn't know where to go. Maybe I was waiting for something worth staying for. She looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time since this all began, her eyes weren't full of anger. They were full of questions, and maybe a flicker of something else. She didn't respond, just reached over, took my hand in hers, and held it there for a few seconds, long enough to mean something. We didn't kiss. We didn't say anything more. But when she stood up and went inside, I didn't feel like a man trapped in a marriage anymore. I felt like a man invited into one. It didn't happen all at once. Love never does. It wasn't some thunderclap moment or a scene out of a romance novel where everything falls into place with a kiss under the stars. No, it came slowly, like rain seeping into dry earth, softening things that had been hard for too long. The morning I realized something had changed between us was nothing special. June was in the kitchen, humming some old tune while scrambling eggs. I was fixing the back door hinge that always stuck when the wind blew right. She glanced over her shoulder, handed me a cup of coffee just the way I liked it, black, no sugar, and smiled. Not forced, not polite, real. That smile did something to me. I'd been around beautiful women before, but beauty had never made me pause. That smile, though, that made the world stop for a beat, because it wasn't just a smile, it was an offering, a sliver of trust, a signal that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the enemy anymore. From there, things shifted, quiet and steady. She started sitting beside me on the porch instead of a few feet away. She asked me questions about my past, not the superficial kind, but the real ones, about my mother, about the scars on my knuckles, about why I never settled down before. I answered all of them. In return, she told me about college, about the way her ex made promises he never kept, about the dreams she gave up to come back home when her father got sick. She never cried, but her voice would catch sometimes, and when it did, I'd reach for her hand. Not to fix anything, just to hold on. One night, we danced. There was no music, just the wind and the creak of the old barn. We'd been organizing hay bales, laughing about something dumb. I don't even remember what. And suddenly she grabbed my hand, spun herself into my arms and said, "Come on, cowboy. Let's see if you got rhythm." I didn't. Not really. But I held her close and let her lead, and for a few minutes everything felt easy, like we were just two people, not bound by a deal or a name or a past we didn't choose, just two hearts trying to beat in time. We didn't talk about love, not then. We didn't need to, but love was there, building itself between fence posts and breakfast dishes, between barn repairs and moonlit dances. It grew in the quiet, in the doing, in the staying. Then came the day her father collapsed in the field. I was the one who found him, lying there, his face pale, breath ragged. We rushed him to the hospital, and I sat beside her in the waiting room while she squeezed my hand so tight it left marks. The doctor said it was a stroke, not fatal, but serious. He'd need care, help, rest. June nodded through the whole thing, her face unreadable. Then, as soon as the doctor left, she crumbled. Not loudly, not dramatically. She just leaned into me, buried her face in my chest and whispered, "I don't want to do this alone." And that's when I said it. Not because I planned to, not because it felt like the right moment, but because it was true. You're not alone. Not anymore. I love you, June. She looked up, eyes wide, searching mine like she needed to be sure I wasn't just saying it to calm her down. "I mean it," I said. "This didn't start the way either of us wanted. But damn it, I wouldn't change it now. Not if it meant losing what we found." She didn't say anything right away, just rested her forehead against mine, breathing slow, letting the words settle. "I love you too," she finally whispered, "even if I fought it with everything I had." After that, everything was different. We went back to the ranch, not as strangers, not even as reluctant partners, but as something real. As a man and a woman who'd walked through pride, pain and uncertainty, and come out holding on to something neither of us believed in at first. We tore up the marriage agreement, not because we weren't married anymore, but because we didn't need it to define us. We stayed together not out of obligation, but because we chose to, every single day. And that's the thing about love, real love. It doesn't demand fireworks. It doesn't ask for perfection. It just asks that you stay. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She wasn't a prize I won in a bet. She was the woman who made me believe in something I thought I'd buried for good. And I was the man who finally learned that sometimes when pride falls, love rises. If this story captivated you, imagine what's next. Subscribe to unlock more tales of twists, turns, and unforgettable romance. Turn on notifications so you're always the first to see our new uploads. And if this video resonated, give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments.